Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Inbound Now. I'm your host David Wells, and joined with me here today is my good friend Joselin Mane. Joselin,
Good.
welcome to the show.
It looks like you remembered my name more than you remembered yours. Hey, what's happening, man?
That that is true. That is true. I'm shooting from my home office today, so it's the first initial setup of the show here, testing out some new things. So a little flustered, but let's dive into it. Joselin is
Fantastic.
the author of the upcoming book, The Ultimate Guide to Networking 2.0, The Benefits of Tweet Ups for both major brands, individual networkers, venues, and sponsors. That is a mouthful. It sounds like an awesome book. We'll dive into exactly what that's about. Joselin is also the founder and lead consulting at LitBill Consulting. He runs BostonTweetups.com and is the meetup mastermind. Every time I go out somewhere in Boston, he is there stalking me. So I'm glad to have you on the show here. So you want to dive into it?
Yeah, man. First, thank you for having me. I know we've been playing around for a little while as far as connecting, so this is awesome. So greatly appreciate the opportunity. And I'm super psyched about the book that's coming out, which is awesome. And that's a working title, so we might see a slight shift in the title later on, but I know the Networking 2.0 is definitely going to be on there. So yeah, so let's get it going.
Awesome, cool. So I wanted to get you on the show, talk about some of the main concepts in the book that's coming out, and how businesses can leverage offline events like tweet ups to kind of solidify their connections that they're making online. And you also have a 5-phase event planning formula that I really want to dive into and really pick your brain about. So let's dive into it. So Joselin, why the book? Why write the book? And who's it really for?
It's actually great question. The book came after literally years of me kind of analyzing events. Boston Tweet Up, when it first got started, was pretty much just a promotional service. So we were just putting out messages regarding events, and we hosted a calendar. And there's tens of calendars out there. What we did was we aggregated, put it in one spot, started pushing information out, leveraging social media. And then the next phase to that became more, so that was the promotional part. And then the planning came about because what we started to see and what I started to see was there was a formula as to how to put together a good event. And whether it was a tweet up or a non-tweet up, any event that leverages social media. And before I go any further, I just quickly want to define tweet up for those people in the audience that might not know what it is. Scott Monty coined the phrase in 2007 when he was gathering a couple of his friends that he had met on Twitter. And he goes, hey, what do you call this? Is it like a meetup? This is kind of like a hybrid thing. Why don't we just call it a tweet up? And ever since then, it became the standard. And pretty much what it is, or what it began with was just me and you connected on Twitter, and we've never physically met. So what we would say is, hey, why don't we meet at X and Y Cafe? And you tell your Twitter followers, I'll tell my Twitter followers, and we go there, we hang out, we meet for the first time, and that's awesome. As things evolved, those events, those tweet ups gained a hashtag so that when people communicated about going to this event, they all use the same hashtag so that people could follow if they weren't able to come, and those types of things kind of evolved from there. So they become much more sophisticated, and thus the book. I tend to go to 2 to 3 events a night, just networking. They're not all tweet ups, but they're all networking events, and I definitely saw a difference between the events that leverage social media, non-tweet ups, and tweet ups, and just how people could benefit so much more with social media infused events and from these tweet up events. So I wanted to put it all into like a big guide that was more than just a PDF. And to answer your question directly about who it's for, number one is for the networker, how to best leverage your personal brand, your corporate brand at these events. For the organizer, how to best put together these events to gather the right people. It's for the venue. Now with geolocation, things like Foursquare, things like Yelp, and all these other things that leverage your GPS, your location, a lot of venues can take advantage of leveraging social media and have hosting these tweet ups. And sponsors, how do you leverage the efforts of others to get your brand out there? How do you fund something? How do you sponsor something so that your brand gets that visibility? I also make note of 2 other audience members or participants. One is the speaker, and also one is the partner. They don't pay that. They play a role depending on the format of the event. So that's kind of a big A long answer to your
Right,
specific
right. The
question,
bird's
but
eye
there's a
view.
lot of elements to it.
Gotcha, gotcha. Cool, cool. So speaking specifically about, the organizer, so that would be like the company or group of people that's putting it on. What would be some of the benefits a company would see from running a tweet up or gathering their kind of online connections into a physical space?
Well, that's a fantastic question. So, what we started to do is we started creating what's called a social media command center at events, and tweetups allow that to happen because of the hashtag. So, because people are talking about the event on Twitter before, during, and after, if your brand is being mentioned, here's an easy opportunity for your brand to engage in the conversation and find out more of what your consumers want to know. It can connect you closer to your brand. Most people might be even getting first, they might get their introduction to your brand for the very first time. So it's a great opportunity to leverage people talking about your particular brand, which is awesome. So
Gotcha,
that's
gotcha.
first and foremost. And the thing is, they could be, people could be talking about your brand from all over the world. So in the last events that we've done, we've noticed that not all the conversations were focused on the geolocation of that venue. It's all over the world, so which is awesome.
Gotcha, gotcha. Cool, cool. And then on the flip side of that, for people, in a company that may not be putting on the event, what would be some tips you would have for them? So they're basically the networker at this event. What kind of tips do you have for people, to prep for the event and to really get the most bang for the buck while at a meetup or a tweet up, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah. And then we'll get into the exact definitions of meetups and tweetups because those tend to have a kind of different silo. But to answer that question specifically, which is a great question, to prepare for a particular networking event, it's good that you are found. It's good that you put your best foot forward. So making sure that your online profiles are current. Online profile starting with your Twitter account. Make sure your bio, make sure there's a link that links to your blog. That's on your Twitter page. So when people meet you for the very first time, they most likely, if they don't know of you, they're going to click over to your Twitter page right away and see, oh, what are you all about? Start following you right away. So it's good to have all that stuff kind of filled out. An extra step is to go through and make sure that your background of your Twitter page represents your brand. Even though, excuse me, most people on mobile can't see the background, it's good when they go back to their desk that they look at that branding and it's consistent. Also take some time to update LinkedIn, your blog, obviously, Facebook, all your properties to make sure that, again, they reflect who you are at the moment and who you want to become as far as your personal brand. Because when you're meeting people in real life, they're going to instantly want to just get more information, or right afterwards, they're going to get more information. So before going to the event, that's one step. And also before you go to the event, if there's a published list of people going to the event, do a little research. Kind of find out who's going to the event, look at their Twitter account, what are they tweeting about, look at their LinkedIn, who are they connected with. Maybe there's a connection that you might want to establish. And this helps you when you get to the event because sometimes and this is, again, what separates a tweet up from just a regular event where you kind of have the sense of who's going to the event. This gives you a priority of who to network with first initially. When there's so many people there, you could just look at people in the crowd. Oh, yeah, I've already connected with them on Twitter before this event. Let's kind of reestablish or strengthen our relationship and then take it back on Twitter if necessary. So I'm just going to give you kind of like the highlights. Again, this is what's all going to be in the book. And this is why it's pretty elaborate because there's so many things you could do. So then a quick high level is update your profile, connect with some people. When you're there, connect with more people, follow people right away. Right after the event, acknowledge via Twitter that you've met them. That gives you kind of like a little time and date stamp of the people that you've met. And then just do the traditional follow-up, either an email, have lunch with them, and see if it makes sense. But this is all to connect with the right people at the right time.
Gotcha. And do you think, meeting with these people, solidifying that relationship is like a key ingredient to kind of moving forward with like, a business relationship or what have you?
Yeah, because we do business with the people we know, like, and trust. Yep. So the first thing is the knowing part, and you know them before you go to the event because the like I mentioned before, if it's a tweet up, they indicate who's going there. So that gives you the first step, the knowing. Excuse me. So once you get there and you meet them, that's when you establish if you're going to like them or not. So either they're good, they're bad. You can make that assessment relatively quickly. And the trust comes over time, but you can expedite the trust by having a good stream on Twitter. And I want to focus on Twitter primarily because that's one of the most open systems to find out if you could trust someone just by who they're talking to, what are they communicating. So this will enhance your trustability if, other people are trusting you. So they can quickly look at your stream when they look at your account and they meet you. Are you talking to other people? Are you giving valuable information? So that kind of expedites and gives you that much more of an advantage if you have all that stuff set up. And then again, trust is built over time. So the more you meet them at other networking events, the more it's going to give you some ways to solidify the relationship even further.
Gotcha. So what about businesses that may push back and say, we're not going to run a tweet up because a lot of our audience isn't on Twitter, what have you, and there's a misconception out there that tweet ups are really for more of the nerdy tech crowd, right? What would you say to them?
Yeah, so at this point it's past that stage. Maybe 2 years ago that would have been valid, but if you go to BostonTweetUp.com, we actually incorporated social media. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a tweet up. However, you can incorporate a social media element or a hashtag for the event for people going to talk about it. So, for example, the event that we partnered up with was with swap.com, and what they do is they put together these swaps. So ladies swap clothes at this event, and it's pretty cool. So you got to imagine people are grabbing clothes. So they enabled Twitter and social media for this event, and we were able to look at all the discussions. And we were able to determine that the 275 people that were there that were tweeting reached out to almost 60,000 people leveraging social media, and 81% of the people, there was actually an 800% increase in all the sponsors that were referenced at the event. So there was no way in the past that there was a consistent way that people were communicating about a particular brand because either you knew about their Twitter account or you didn't. So what the host did, or what we recommended, is coming up with a lanyard, putting everyone's correct Twitter account there to make it easier for people to communicate about them. And that single-handedly changed the way people were communicating about these brands because now they had accurate information. It was easy to communicate and things like that. And then afterwards, the brand were able to still engage afterwards. So if you go to BostonTweetUp.com, go to reviews. Under reviews, look for the swap case study, and you'll see the case study. You'll see the numbers. And that's what's really important to understand is social media allows us to add metrics to events that we've never had before. You might just think of the whole process of tweeting like random, and a lot of it is random and foolishness because people talk about whatever they want to talk about.
Right.
But now from a business perspective, you could measure that, hey, I went to an event and one of the common concerns is like, who'd you connect with? Well, I connected with 3 people. So you were there for 4 hours and you just connected with 3 people? But if you say, hey, look, I was there and engaged. These 3 people also endorsed the brand, and you can see how it influenced the behavior of people connecting with us online. Then that's when you could leverage, tools like HubSpot and things like that, where you could measure the transaction. You could see the people and your website traffic increase because people mentioned your brand or you were engaged in the brand at this physical event.
Right. And that was one of my questions for you. So, like, what other metrics would you guys look at in terms of measuring whether an event was successful or not?
So success is really determined at the initial phases. So for example, if your brand just wants to bring awareness to a certain community, then overall volume of discussions about the brand becomes important. If your brand wants to increase its membership in some form or fashion, not just a Twitter following, but maybe a newsletter sign up or maybe a membership site that they've created for a particular group of individuals, say the eco-friendly group wants to increase their fan base or newsletter sign up, that's when you go and you encourage people to do that at the event. Say, here, Why don't you do, scan this QR code, and that's going to sign you up to this newsletter that we're putting together that is specifically targeted at the eco-friendly crowd. And I mentioned eco because eco has been a common tweet up that has happened here in Boston. And it's just not the nerdy, geeky social media crowd. It's a passionate community of individuals that just happen to leverage social media.
Gotcha. Cool. So what other, so you've been talking a lot about, empowering the people at these events, making it really easy, like using a QR code to scan something, or, having their Twitter handles very visible for people to reference them very quickly and easily. Mm-hmm. What other kind of tools or things would you say that you can do at an event to make it much more easy, much more streamlined, so basically they are spreading the word through social media?
So there's a variety of different things, and again, all of it's going to be in the book. So I'll give you a couple. Number one, Foursquare. Creating a venue on Foursquare for the event, depending on how big or small, that could be very valuable. Leaving tips, because that's a digital kind of breadcrumb that you leave that stays on there forever, unless it's, I don't think there's a way to delete it, unless it's really malicious. So people could be leaving links and references to the brand there. So when people check in after the event, they still see the tip and they still reference that. You talked about the QR code. That's a good way to kind of make it easy for people to connect. In the book, I talk about we should all, at this point in time, be one click to connect. And that one click to connect, I believe, is Twitter. Because with your Twitter handle, I can find out everything about you. Your phone number might change, all of a sudden your email changes left and right. But if you have this one Twitter handle, you have this conversation with someone, it's a preferred method. And then from there, you could kind of navigate them to your source, your hub, your blog, whatever the case might be, stuff that you can control, which is important to do. So I would say leveraging Foursquare, leveraging Twitter, the mobile phone, and so those should get you started. There's a lot more that I elaborate on in the book, but those should be good to get you started.
Gotcha. Cool. So do you use a preferred method to get people to sign up? I know there's Eventbrite out there and Meetup.com. Is there something, a preferred kind of service you use to set up your tweet ups and meetups?
Yeah, so depending on the size of the event and the knowledge of the individual organizer or organization that's putting together the event, I tend to recommend two primary sources to register. So number one, as you mentioned, is Eventbrite. Eventbrite is very good at handling the registration process, integrating with the CRM, integrating with your email system, and it's become the standard now for people to host tweet-ups to use Eventbrite, and it is free to use. The next is Twitbite, and that I recommend for maybe an event that's not going to have, it's going to be like a one-off event. It's not going to be a series. It's more friendly, more casual. The expertise of the person isn't high as far as technology is concerned, or they don't have a lot of time to get it up and running. So I'll suggest that. Now, I want to take a moment too to just clarify the Meetup and the Tweet Up. So Meetup tends to charge for setting up their platform, so you have to be vested. Meetups also tend to have a specific agenda. They want to talk about this topic. It's a speaker. It's that kind of stuff. Tweetups tend to be a little bit more casual. The speaking is cut down to a minimum. There is ways to kind of leverage it for a variety of different reasons. One of the most popular and most well-known case studies out there now is Twestival. That was the first global tweet-up where they were raising money for clean water. Amanda put this together. Amanda on Twitter, shout out to her. And I reference a lot of case studies within the book and giving people different ideas of how they could put together a tweet-up or a social media-fused event.
Cool, awesome. So also in the book you talk about the 5 phases of event planning and promotion with new media. So can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, so most people think of just the 3 phases, which is the before the event, during the event, and the after event. But I took it a step further and added 2 more at the beginning that I found that were very important. So one is the pre-planning. So at the high level, it's pre-planning, planning, pre-event, during event, and post-event. So the pre-planning is really when you start thinking about the theme. I actually created a video on BostonTweetup.com that goes through what a theme is in particular. So you could go there for more information there. So once you have the theme, you could actually determine the right venue based on the theme. You also talk about, excuse me, the goal. So what is the goal of the event? And we talked about a few of those earlier in this conversation. So you have the theme, you have the goal, and then you start looking for venues and things like that. And that's when you get into the planning stages. So you have the venue and you start putting all these things together. You set up the registration page. You optimize it based on your theme, based on your goal, and things that you want to optimize is like I know in Eventbrite you could specifically give ticket names, for example, so you could have the early adopters with a ticket type called early adopters, and then you have the people that are slow to move, and that could be the last ones that kind of register, and you could charge them more for being slow, stuff like that. But if it's fun and entertaining, that's the theme and that's the vibe that you convey on the registration page, for example. You can optimize the Eventbrite page to your company's branding. You can incorporate that into your blog. So that's why I recommend it, and I go through a lot more steps in the book. So you got pre-planning, you got the planning, and then you got the pre-event. This is when you send out the email before the event. This is the last minute things you do, the day of, the day before the event, things like that. Then there's the during event. This is where you start aggregating and put the content aggregation system into play. And you start seeing all the people tweeting and all these other things. And then before the event, also you want to make sure that you have a way to capture all this stuff easily. So I go through some methods of being able to capture all the tweets. Because as you know, being on Twitter doesn't do a good job of capturing all this information. Right. So if you don't set up stuff beforehand, you kind of miss out on a lot of the conversations and things like that you might want to highlight in a case study report or anything like that. So then during the event, you're hosting, you're communicating what's happening out to people that might be interested. And then afterwards, do a follow-up, do a blog post, keep the conversation going. There's generally a bell curve that occurs. And I've seen, for example, if it's done right, that the event and theme of the event might be trending in the local town or city before the event even started, which is almost a sign that if you do things right, success could be measured even before the event starts. So, that's something that, again, we go into the book, and that's why it's more comprehensive than just a little ebook or something else. That's why I wanted to put it all in the book, because there's a lot of different steps. But if you do them right, your brand and everyone else wins. So you can create a win-win-win situation for everybody.
Awesome. Cool. So someone out there that's, heard all these great, awesome tips from you thus far, and they're looking to start their own, meetup, but they're a little bit scared to get started. What would you say to them? Where should they start?
So I would say go to BostonTweetup.com. We actually have services for not only the networker, the venue, the organizer, the sponsors. So contact us. We'll be able to kind of go through the process very easily. There's a lot of resources on the site. We actually have guides on the Boston Tweetup site for, again, the networker, the organizer, the venue, and the sponsors, so that you specifically know some tips and tricks. We also are hired to go and create a social media command center for events, or be involved in, say a PR agency wants to host an event for their client, and they're getting involved with a tweet-up or want to leverage a tweet-up. We've been hired in the past to put that all stuff together, and it's been very effective, and we can provide the analytics and all this information, things like that. But there's a lot of information that we have on the site specifically to help and guide individuals that are putting tweet-ups together for the very first time.
All right, awesome. So yeah, I'll link up to that in the show notes. And so Joselin, where can people find you online?
So I'm at both Boston Tweetup, but my personal account is Joselin Mane on Twitter, which is JOSELINMANE. So those are the two ways that you can one click to connect with me.
Or visit you at any Boston local event, right? You'll be there. Yes.
Absolutely. So when I do see you, it'll be nice. Mention that you saw this video, and it'll be I'll buy a beer.
Hey, there you go. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Definitely want to get you back in the future, and definitely looking forward to the book launch. So absolutely,
you'll definitely hear a lot about it.
Awesome.
But thanks for having me on the show. This was awesome. I was definitely looking forward to having it, and the time is here, and I had a fantastic time.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, well, we'll get you back on, and thanks for coming on. Thanks for tuning
All right,
in, everybody, and
all right.
see you next time.
I'll see you at a tweet up soon.
Yeah.